afternoon. This is Candace Gransall and this is PNM News. We are currently outside the Red House awaiting the PNM MPs to exit the Red House to get their initial response to the 2K budget presentation by the People's Partnership. Good afternoon, Mrs. McDonald. I would just like to get your initial response to the 2K10 budget.
I thought that for 2.5 hours I sat there and I saw no new initiatives for development. Absolutely none. And I'm wondering exactly how they're going to move this country forward. Those were my initial, response to. And I'm sitting and I'm listening, all listening about the establishment of the Motor Vehicle Authority and the Drainage Authority. All those came from the PNM. All came from the PNM. We looked at that fiasco with CLICO. You're going to have a lot of people hurting, ordinary citizens hurting outside there. It is something I believe was not well thought out with respect to those short-term investors in CLICO. And you're going to get the backlash of it. You're going to hear from tomorrow what is happening. It really, 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 it is a budget to me that will hurt the people. That's my initial response.
Promise much, delivered little. Running true to form, the Minister of Finance and the second government that he's taken part in has presented a budget that really is not exciting in any way. There were 3 areas of initiative. One was the new government's approach on bringing the CLICO matter to a head, the HCU attention, and a promise of a database in the licensing office that would allow manipulation by officers who can bring about better control of the nation's traffic. Those 3 things I would say were positives. The bulk of the budget speech after that was pure cliche and a pedestrian reproduction of things that have been finding their way into budgets year in, year out. When we hear these cliches about agriculture, CNG, small business, there was nothing new there. There was nothing that stirred the imagination. The great promise that was held out for economic transformation, we're still waiting on that. I saw nothing, I heard nothing in the budget which I can associate with the phrase economic transformation. The energy sector, there is a tremendous frightening statement there about turning inwards. Our energy sector is not something that can be sustained by looking inwards. The NAR made that mistake before in '86 and virtually killed the energy sector. And I heard Mr. Dukaran making the same mistake again this time. But we'll treat it on Tuesday when we respond.
Well, I think it's more of the same. In other words, the government will have done exactly what they were required to do by law, which is to ensure that the Tobago House of Assembly got somewhere in the vicinity of a minimum of 4.03% of the total budget. I haven't done the arithmetic, but I suspect that what they would have given us was almost exactly 4.03%, which they had to do by law. So they did us no favors. But as I said, the funding that we have, we will be in a position where we'll be able to continue Tobago's development. So that I am neither excited nor disappointed as to what has transpired, because exactly what I expected, the government will do what it was required to do by law, and they will do us no favor.
As I said, I found the budget very strange. They have cut the allocation to the Ministry of National Security by almost $2 billion. They've reallocated that money to other ministries, such as the Ministry of Works. I don't understand why they've done that, because there's a minimum amount of money required to run that Ministry of National Security, to pay police officers, to pay for the Coast Guard, the Army, and so on, the fire services. So by taking that huge chunk of money out of there, obviously they're going to put pressure on the security system. The Minister of Finance, however, said that crime or fighting crime was a priority. How is he going to do that? By taking that huge sum of money out of the Ministry of National Security. So that's the first oddity in the budget. The second thing that bothers me is that the Minister of Finance spoke about fiscal responsibility and being prudent and managing the country well and bringing it back from the brink of recession. He had to admit that under the last PNM government, we had returned this economy to economic growth. He couldn't help it that the economy has grown over 2% in the last year under the PNM. And as a result, the deficit, the actual deficit for the last fiscal year is far less than we had projected it to be, because the revenues have been better. However, having said that the new government is going to balance the budget and make sure revenue and expenditure are in balance, he has come up with a budget that has the largest ever budget deficit this country has ever seen, at almost $8 billion. So the revenue is $41 billion and the expenditure is $49. And he hasn't explained where that $8 billion is coming from. Whether he's borrowing it, working magic, I don't know. In all, I found the budget very populist, but very, very thin and very weak on details. And I really would like to know, how are they financing that $8 billion deficit? I suspect it's just smoke and mirrors. They won't really spend $49 billion. They'll spend far less because they just don't have the capacity to find that $8 billion. And it's really more of a mama guy budget.
One of the interesting things about the whole budget is the whole CLICO issue, which is something we have to sit down and look at very, very closely. From all indications, it seems as if a number of people will not be benefiting from that move that just took place there. Another thing that we need to look at is the whole idea of scrapping the rapid rail. But why they scrap the rapid rail, you want to put in an underground tunnel from Tunapuna all the way to Maracas. I wonder whether or not that initiative will service the type of people or the amount of people that having the rapid rail in place.
Well, I would have to say that I was quite disappointed in this budget. It was built up. Persons expected the Minister of Finance to bring to bear his purported wisdom and experience in economics to treat with the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. I saw no evidence of that today. And what we had is one of the most vacuous budgets, in my humble opinion, for many years in this country. Very little of substance. The usual relabeling and recycling of programs of the past government. I heard talk of an international business sector as opposed to the international financial center, and so many other things that were just relabeled. And many sectors of the society would have been listening anxiously for some relief. I could give the example of the senior citizens, many of whom felt disenfranchised by the recent actions of this government, and they would have been listening for some sign of remorse or some degree of relief from those broken promises. Of course, they got none of that. So I feel a sense of disappointment. I'm hoping that during the budget debate, when the line ministers have the opportunity to elaborate, we might hear something more of substance. That was lacking in this budget. And again, the new direction that was built up simply was not presented.
What I felt is that it was extremely vague, because he basically said that we will do this and we will do that, but not really establishing specific objectives in terms of how these particular things would be implemented. I felt it was a lot of flattery, a whole lot of promises that they proposed, things that they actually proposed to do, but I really don't feel that they actually really would get it done in terms of, because for instance, one of the things they said is that they're going to establish an industrial park in Point Fortin. What does that mean? What type of industries are they actually going to get into? They're going to build a tunnel leading from Tunapuna to Maracas Valley. I mean, Maracas Valley is a different community compared to Maracas, where Maracas Bay is located, right? So, I mean, there are a lot of things that really are very unclear, a lot of things that, I really don't think that they actually thought it through. And it is, to me, just a whole lot of airy-fairy, a whole lot of flattery that I really don't think that they're really seeking to implement over any specific period of time.
I thought it lacked meat, as they would say. It just had like a set of promises. I felt as though they were on the campaign trail again. And some of it, of course, to me was quite comical, because I listened to, for my area in particular, a tunnel from Tunapuna to Maracas Bay. I don't know if he misunderstood where Maracas Bay is, but from Tunapuna, you get to the deep heart of Maracas and Joseph, you end in Luengo, and it's all hill. So there's no way you could get from Tunapuna to Maracas Bay. So that one to me was quite comical. You know, and I listened intently for areas affecting my people, you know, in the St. Anne's East constituency. I listened, for example, you know, things affecting the URP, the daily paid. There was mention of, you know, giving them benefits and so, but no details. You know, everything was just laid on the surface. So it has you, what exactly took place just now? You know, how is it impacting on me? So I think during the debate, I think is when we will gather exactly what they were trying to say by some of the initiatives that they came up with, which is reinvention really of the PNM policies and so.
A while ago, that budget was a very nebulous budget, lack of specifics and so on. And I have a real interest in the Southwestern Peninsula where the smelter is concerned. I think it's very sad indeed for them to discontinue with the smelter, because economically, from a health standpoint, from a social standpoint and so on, it makes sense to continue with the smelter. I think it's a vindictive act on the part of the government not to continue with the smelter, because Labray is PLM territory. You understand? So I am hoping that I would like people to listen to my response to the budget debate next Friday, because we'll have much more to say.
It's difficult to digest everything that was said because there's a lot of rhetoric and it's very hard to pull out really what's meaningful in it. I personally am a little pleased just to hear that there's going to be a highway to Point Fortin, but of course concerned about the rest of the highway network, because we were doing something like 6 highways. So down to one, yes, it's Point Fortin, but I'm concerned for the rest of the road programs throughout Trinidad and Tobago. I'm also pleased to hear that the hospital for Point Fortin is included. I mean, I take some responsibility that we hadn't started working on that before. But the fact is that it's there, and I hope that it really does materialize. Apart from that, I found that there are lots of things missing. I couldn't add up quite. There's a lot of rhetoric on energy and trade investments and so on, but not concrete enough. Nothing I could say that different to what we were doing before. Okay, they've included fashion and film and so on, but we were attending to those things. And it's small money that has been put forward in terms of small business development and so on. I think $10 million for some innovative area or something like that. But to say that there was anything conclusive, I'm concerned about the property tax as well. It's the same thing, different name, but it's the same thing. And I think it's going to be the values. That's what we're going to look at. The crucial thing, the values, the new values, so that people will in fact be paying more. They've said no increases and going back to the old values, but I don't understand that. I don't know that the legislation allows for that. So let's see what happens. But we need a little more time to digest it. But in terms of education, nothing specific. Some milk. So really, I think this is a milk and cookie crumbs budget, because I can't really figure out where the cookies are in this for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Really, I can't say that there's any real benefit. CNG, yes, but that's old. That's from the PNM regime. We have exhausted that, and we had put forward policies on that already. Exploration and drilling and so on in the energy sector, done by us as well. New tax regimes in the energy sector, done by us as well. And so can't really. I'm concerned about the prices that the budget is based on, the $65 and so on. I think it's unrealistic, but let's see. But so we have to look in detail now and at the lead of the opposition's office, and we'll take it from there.